I've never been the kind of guy who needed to shout to be heard. I built my career, hell, my whole life, on quiet certainty. Calm decisions, clean lines, things that fit together and stayed standing. I'm an architect, after all. My job is to build what lasts. That mindset bled into everything. My work, my friendships, my marriage. No drama, no raised voices. Just steady hands and good intentions. That was the idea. Emma was different. She didn't walk into my life. She blew in, like a warm gust through a door I'd left cracked open. We met in a bookstore of all places in Savannah. I was in the architecture section, flipping through a hardcover on Eames. She was at the register, arguing with the cashier about a mispriced novel, some out-of-print Hemingway edition she insisted was tagged wrong. I remember the way she stood there, not angry, just certain. Like the universe owed her that book at that price, and she wasn't leaving until it happened. I watched her win the argument. Then I watched her turn, lock eyes with me for a second too long, and smirk like she knew I'd been watching. That smirk was the start of everything. She was unpredictable in the way that makes you want to follow just to see where she's headed. At first, it was exciting. She lit up every room she entered, changed jobs like seasons, danced barefoot in the kitchen with no music. I was measured, she was kinetic. We worked, I think, because I made her feel grounded and she made me feel alive. She landed at a logistics company, Pioneer Solutions, after bouncing through everything from catering to event planning to some vague PR stint she never really explained. But something clicked there. She got promoted fast, became one of their rising stars. I told her I was proud. And I was. Even when she started working late. Even when she stopped showing up to dinner. Even when she forgot our 10th anniversary until I reminded her. I told myself that was what love meant. Letting your partner grow. Standing still so they could run. 3 years ago, I nearly lost everything in Atlanta. A developer pulled out of a huge project last minute, and the dominoes fell hard. Clients bailed, subcontractors sued. My name, my work, things I thought were bulletproof, got dragged through courtrooms and headlines. I isolated, shut everyone out. But Emma showed up. She drove 3 hours to the cabin I'd holed up in without telling anyone where I'd gone. She brought Thai takeout and a bottle of cheap wine, sat on the porch swing next to me, and didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally spoke, all she said was, "You're not alone, Tom. Not in this. Not ever." I believed her. I clung to that sentence like it was a foundation I could rebuild on. That night, I asked her if she still believed in us. She looked at me like I was an idiot and kissed me. I thought that meant yes. Turns out, love can look a lot like comfort when you're desperate. I see that now. Fast forward to last week. Our 11th anniversary. I booked a reservation at Oak and Pine, the same place we celebrated our first anniversary, where I once told her I wanted to spend forever figuring her out. Back then, she'd laughed and said, "Good luck. I don't even know myself." This time, I got there early. It felt important. I wore the shirt she once said made me look like I knew secrets. Had a gift in my coat pocket, a small, delicate bracelet with a tiny compass charm. The irony didn't hit me until later. The waiter asked if I'd like to wait before ordering. I told him I would. I figured she was running late, maybe stuck at work. Her messages had been short all week, busy day, long meeting, rain check dinner. But she'd promised she wouldn't miss this one. I believed her. Even then, I believed her. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I checked my phone, no new texts. The room buzzed with conversation, soft laughter, clinking glasses. The kind of warm noise that usually made me feel at home. Then I heard it. Her laugh. I would know that laugh in a storm. That sharp, almost defiant cackle that always turned heads. I looked up, and there she was, across the dining room, tucked into a corner booth under low light. She wasn't alone. Mike was with her. I knew him. Met him twice, both times at Pioneer holiday parties. Mid-40s, flashy watch, the kind of guy who brags about deal sizes before appetizers arrive. They were sitting close. Too close. Her hand was resting on his arm in a way that made my stomach knot instantly. And then I saw the dress. The green one. The one I bought her 2 years ago after she said she never owned anything that made her feel beautiful and strong. She wore it for our anniversary that year, when things still felt right. Now, it clung to her shoulders like it had forgotten me. They clinked glasses. "To 3 amazing months," he said, loud enough for me to hear even over the hum of the room. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I just sat there for a beat too long, staring at a version of my life I wasn't invited to. I didn't rage. I didn't march over and make a scene. That's not who I am. I took the ring off my finger and stood. Walked past their table. She didn't see me at first. But when she did, when her eyes finally landed on mine, she froze. I watched every muscle in her body tense as I reached the edge of their booth, placed the ring beside her untouched wine glass, and said nothing. Her eyes widened, mouth parted like she was about to say my name, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned and left before either of them could speak. Outside, the cold hit harder than I expected. I stood on the curb for a moment, breathing in the air like it could wash her voice out of my head. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it. I knew what it would say. I walked to the car with no idea where I was going. But one thing was clear, I wasn't going home. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. Not because she'd taken anything, not yet, but because the air itself felt borrowed. Every room I stepped into felt like someone else's memory. The coffee mug still on the drying rack. The lotion bottle in the bathroom turned just so, like it always was after she used it. A pair of earrings on the nightstand. It was like she was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of our bed, no, my bed now, and stared at the closet. Her side was still full. Dresses I knew by name. The coat she bought on our trip to Boston. A pair of boots she insisted were ugly but secretly loved. I couldn't look at them without feeling like I was being mocked. Like every item was part of a joke I hadn't realized I was the punchline of. In the morning, I got up early and went to work like nothing had happened. Not because I was okay, but because I didn't know what else to do. I was afraid if I stayed home, I'd break something. Or worse, do nothing at all. Numbness is its own kind of hell. She didn't call. Didn't text. I checked once, mid-meeting, and there it was, a single unread message from her, timestamped just after I walked out of that restaurant. Please talk to me. Please don't do this. That was it. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it's not what it looked like. Just, please don't do this. Like I was the one detonating the bomb. After work, I drove home slowly, half hoping she'd be gone already. But her car was still in the driveway. Lights on inside. Shadows moving past the curtains. For a second I just sat in the car, gripping the wheel like I was about to go into battle. She was waiting for me in the living room. On the edge of the couch, eyes wide and watery, like a child waiting to be scolded. She didn't say anything at first, just looked at me like she was trying to guess what version of me had walked through the door. "Tom," she started, but I held up a hand. "Don't," I said. "Not yet." I walked past her, went upstairs, grabbed a duffel bag from the hall closet, and started packing. Not my things. Drawer by drawer, hanger by hanger, I pulled pieces of her out of my life. I didn't throw or rip or scream. I folded. Neatly. Deliberately. As if packing for a trip she'd never return from. She followed me up after a minute, stood in the doorway like a ghost. "Please stop. Can we just talk?" "We could have talked," I said without turning around. "We had 11 years to talk." She was crying now. Quietly but there. It didn't mean anything. I zipped up the bag. "That's worse." I walked it downstairs and left it by the door. Then another. Then another. 3 full bags and a box of shoes. I took the delicate stuff, jewelry, her sketchbooks, a photo album she loved but hadn't looked at in years, and set them in a separate bin. I'm not cruel. Or at least I didn't want to be. When I was done, I turned to her. "Your mom's expecting you. I already called. She's not thrilled, but she said she'd take the stuff." "You called my mom?" she asked, stunned. "I didn't think your new boyfriend would want it in his place." The look on her face was something I'll never forget. Not guilt. Not sadness. Just confusion. Like she genuinely hadn't considered the fact that what she did had consequences. Like this all felt sudden to her. I didn't yell. I didn't demand answers. What was the point? I had all the answers I needed. When she left, I didn't watch her drive away. I locked the door behind her and leaned against it for a long time, listening to the echo of nothing. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, like the moment after a gunshot when everything's still ringing. That night, I changed the locks. Pulled her name from the smart thermostat, the alarm app, the car insurance. Called the cable company and dropped the streaming package she liked. Every tiny thing felt like peeling her off my life one fingerprint at a time. I opened the fridge and found her half-used oat milk, the overpriced wine she always bought and rarely finished, a container of strawberries already starting to rot. I tossed all of it. The next morning, I cleared the bathroom counter. Her hairbrush, her serums, her endless line of lip balms. The scent of her shampoo still hung in the air. I opened a window. I wasn't trying to erase her. I was just done pretending she still lived here. She came back 2 days later. I was home, sanding down a piece of wood in the garage. She knocked, and I didn't answer at first. Eventually, I opened the door, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to look her in the eye one more time, just to make sure I hadn't imagined any of it. She looked smaller. No makeup, hair pulled back, wearing the oversized hoodie she always stole from my side of the closet. That hurt more than it should have. I didn't expect you to shut me out like this, she said, her voice barely audible. I nodded once. That's the problem. I thought we were better than this, she said, stepping forward. You thought you were better than getting caught, I said flatly. Her jaw clenched. I never stopped loving you. Then why did you stop choosing me? That shut her up. She looked away, like the floorboards suddenly got interesting. Then she said it, the thing that cracked whatever piece of me hadn't snapped already. I needed something different. I needed to feel alive again. I laughed. Not bitterly. Just hollow. So you threw a grenade into our life. For what? A spark. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It went exactly as far as you let it. We stood in silence, both of us pretending there was more to say. But there wasn't. I nodded toward the street. Your stuff's at your mom's. This house isn't yours anymore. She didn't argue. She just looked at me like she was waiting for a different version of me to appear. One who'd wrap her in his arms and say he forgave her. That guy was gone. After she left, I turned off my phone, turned off the lights, and sat in the middle of the living room floor. The house creaked like it was morning too. I wasn't angry. I was past that. I just felt nothing. And that, somehow, was worse. The silence didn't let up. It stretched, unbroken, across the days that followed, filling every room, every empty drawer, every gap where something of hers used to be. I didn't realize how much sound a person carries with them until all of it's gone. The soft clicks of her typing late into the night, the squeak of the bathroom cabinet she always swore she'd fix, the hum of her playlists in the kitchen while she made tea she never finished. Now, there was only the occasional creak of the floor, the wind tapping against the window panes, and my own breathing. She stopped trying after that last visit. No texts. No emails. No phone calls begging me to understand. Maybe she knew she'd said the one thing that couldn't be unsaid. I needed to feel alive again. As if I'd been the thing keeping her asleep. But what really gutted me wasn't the betrayal, it was the realization that all those nights I waited up, all the takeout I kept warm, the missed calls she never returned, the times I let things slide because work's been insane, they weren't just signs I ignored. They were clues I buried. Somewhere deep down, I think I knew. I think most people do, even if they won't admit it. What broke me wasn't the image of her with someone else. It was the memory of her sitting on the edge of our bed 6 months ago, telling me she was just tired, that she didn't feel like herself lately. I told her she probably needed a vacation. She nodded and kissed my cheek. She was already gone. I found out the full truth by accident, though part of me wonders if it was ever really hidden. A week after she left, I got a call from a friend we used to double date with, Alex. He and his wife, Lena, had always been closer to Emma than me, but we got along well enough. I hadn't heard from either of them since the night everything fell apart. Hey man, Alex said, voice stiff, too polite. I didn't want to intrude, but I thought you should know. That's never a good start. He went on to tell me that Emma had been confiding in Lena for months. That she'd been unsure about our marriage since the previous fall. That she'd told Lena about Mike before things turned physical, or so she claimed. According to them, it just happened. She was confused, lonely, craving attention. I said nothing. Just listened as Alex fumbled through a half-hearted defense that sounded more like guilt than concern. He ended with, "She's not doing great, if it makes any difference." It didn't. Because a few hours after that call, I heard the voicemail. I hadn't checked the landline in forever, one of those things we kept out of habit. But I was in the kitchen, putting away dishes, and saw the red light blinking. I hit play without thinking. "Hey, Emma. It's me." It was Mike. His voice was tense, hurried, like he was calling from his car. "Look, I know you're upset, but I need you to stop. You can't keep calling me like this. I told you, I'm not leaving my wife. I thought you understood that. What we had, it was fun, but that's all it was. Please stop making this into something it's not." Beep. The message cut off there, but the damage was instant. My hands went cold. My chest went tight. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd built a fantasy and then gotten left behind in it. All those nights she came home smiling after working late, all those times she said Mike was just the guy who ran logistics. He was the center of a world she thought she could live in. And now he was slamming the door shut on her too. I didn't call her. I didn't ask questions. I just stood in the kitchen, staring at the phone like it had spit poison into my house. She didn't want to lose me. She lost everything. The next morning, I woke up to a text from her father. It was short. "Tom, I'm sorry for everything you're going through. Emma isn't well. She's moved back in with us. It's not the same." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. What would I say? Thanks for raising a woman who shattered my life and then got left in the rubble? Some things don't deserve a response. The following week, the divorce papers were ready. I had them delivered, served actually. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed it to be real. Final. Legal. No more blurred lines, no more maybes, no more, "Can we talk?" She signed them at her parents' place. Sent them back without a note. A mutual friend later told me she cried the whole time. That she asked if I was seeing someone. That she said I moved on too fast. I almost laughed. Moved on? There was no moving on. Just moving through. And some nights, barely that. One night, I found myself sitting in the guest room, the one we used to call the just in case someone visits room, though no one ever did. I turned it into a storage space, but that night, I cleared a path through the old boxes and sat on the floor, lights off, staring at nothing. That's when it hit me. Not the betrayal, not the lies, those had been playing on repeat for weeks. What hit me was this: she had stopped loving me quietly. So quietly I didn't even hear it leave. Not in an explosion, not in a dramatic fight. Just bit by bit. Until one day she was in love with someone else, and I was the only one still fighting for a version of us that no longer existed. There's no fixing something when the other person's already left the room. So I stopped trying. I deleted the last voicemail she ever left me. The one that said, "I still love you. I hope someday you'll understand." I don't want to understand. I just want to forget. The finality came not with her tears, or her father's call, or even the divorce itself, but with paper. Not metaphorical paper. Literal. A knock at the door, mid-morning on a Thursday, and there he was, some kid in a windbreaker holding a manila envelope like it held a grenade. "Are you Thomas Bennett?" I nodded. "You've been served." It was so anticlimactic it felt like a joke. I half expected a hidden camera crew to jump out from the bushes. He handed me the envelope and walked off before I could ask a single question. I brought it inside, laid it on the kitchen table, and stared at it. The surface was smooth, unmarked. Clinical. Like it had no idea what it carried. Eventually, I opened it. Divorce decree. Final version. Ready for court. Just sign here. There was a note clipped to the front in my lawyer's handwriting. Neat, all caps. Let me know if you want to push for alimony or assets. Based on her employment status and documented infidelity, you're in a strong position. I didn't need money. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted out. I signed where I had to. No delay. No stalling. No dramatic rereads. The signatures went down like cutting the last thread of a noose. Done. 2 days later, I got confirmation from my attorney. It was filed. We were officially on the road to legally erasing a marriage that had taken over a decade to build. And yet, nothing really felt different. The bed was still half empty. The closet, half full of air. The house echoed in ways it never used to. But I was breathing again. A week passed. Then 2. And then her dad called again. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, stubborn, traitorous curiosity, got the better of me. Tom, he said, voice heavy, like he'd aged 10 years since the last time we spoke. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. But I thought you should know. I waited. Emma's not well. Define not well, I said, maybe a little too coldly. She's not working anymore. They let her go. Apparently she missed deadlines. Stopped showing up some days. HR told her to take time off. Then they didn't renew her contract. He paused. She's been in therapy. She's staying in her old room. Won't eat some days. Barely talks to her mom. I said nothing. I'm not saying this to make you feel guilty, he added quickly. I know she made her choices. He exhaled shakily. I just thought you should hear it from someone who still gives a damn what happens to her. I appreciated the honesty. But I also didn't know what he expected me to do with it. I thanked him, told him I hoped she got help, and hung up. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I missed her, but because grief doesn't care if you're the one who left. It still claws at you in the dark. I found myself pulling out old things, not to reminisce, not really. More like an autopsy. A box in the attic marked anniversary cards and random junk. Inside were crumpled love notes, half-finished crossword puzzles we used to race to complete, even the cork from the champagne bottle we popped on our first New Year's together. There was a napkin from our favorite cafe with her lipstick stains still faintly visible. And a photo. One I didn't remember taking. We were sitting on a park bench, her legs over mine, laughing. I was looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered. And back then she was. I didn't cry. I just sat with the photo in my lap, letting the silence speak for both of us. The next morning, I dropped the whole box at a donation center. Everything except the photo. That went in a drawer. Later, I learned from a mutual friend that Mike had gone back to his wife. Apparently, it ended right after I found them. Maybe even before. Word was he never intended to leave his marriage. Emma was a mistake he couldn't risk getting caught with. He was right about one thing. It was a mistake. Just not for the reasons he thought. Emma bet everything on a man who wouldn't even take a risk for her. She gave up a marriage, a home, a partner who would have built her a world from scratch, just to be someone's secret. Her fall didn't feel like karma. It just felt sad. I didn't reach out. Not even when I saw her name pop up in my inbox weeks later. Subject line, just once. I deleted it without reading. Because I already knew what it would say. She wanted closure. Or forgiveness. Or a chance to remind me of all the things we once were. But I'd already given her all I had. That was the difference between us. She gambled on fantasy. I dealt in reality. And in the real world, some bridges burn themselves. One night, a month after the papers were filed, I passed by Oak and Pine on my way home from work. I hadn't been back since that night. I pulled into the parking lot without thinking. Not to go inside. Just to sit. To remind myself how far I'd come. Through the window, I saw a couple at our old table. They were laughing, holding hands across a flickering candle. I wondered if that man would one day sit alone like I had. I hope not. Not everyone survives that kind of silence. I drove home, parked in the garage, and sat in the dark for a while. Then I went inside and finally did what I'd been avoiding for weeks. I took down the wedding photo in the hallway. Not because I hated it, but because it didn't belong on the wall anymore. I wrapped it in a towel, set it gently in a cedar box I'd built with my own hands. And I put it on the highest shelf in the garage. Out of reach, but not erased. Time passed like it always does. Slowly at first, then in strange little jumps, days blending into each other, months peeling off the calendar like leaves in a wind. The house stopped feeling haunted. The silence softened. Not peace, not right away, but space. I needed space more than I realized. I kept working. Took on more projects. Said yes to things I used to put off. A client referred me to a small design competition, and I won. Nothing huge, but it felt good to be seen for something that wasn't tied to my past. Weekends got quieter, but not lonely. I started waking up early again. Walked the neighborhood before the city got loud. Drank my coffee out on the porch, listening to birds instead of checking for her voice in another room. One Saturday, I decided to clean out the garage for real. Not just move boxes around, but claim the space. I cleared everything, scrubbed the floor, painted the walls a pale gray that reminded me of clean slates. I built a workbench. Hung up my tools. Installed soft lights above the shelves. Then, in the far corner, I started restoring the car I'd inherited from my dad, a 1969 Mustang that hadn't seen the road in 20 years. There was something therapeutic in it. Strip the rust. Replace what doesn't work. Sand down the scars, but don't erase them. They're part of the story. One evening, while I was under the hood, an old friend stopped by. Kelly. We'd worked together briefly on a sustainable housing project back when things were better, before the crash, before Emma. She was sharp, grounded, never once fed into the politics of the business. I always liked her energy, but timing had never aligned. She was in the neighborhood, saw the garage open, and popped in. We talked like no time had passed. Just tools, projects, stories. No probing questions, no mention of exes. I didn't feel the need to explain anything. And that felt strange. In a good way. After that, she started dropping by on weekends. Not every time. Not like we were something. Just enough to remind me what a normal conversation sounded like. We'd sand wood and compare notes on restoration techniques. She brought coffee. I shared music. Sometimes we'd sit in silence, both of us focused on whatever we were building. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't healing. It was just easy. And for once, easy felt like enough. A few weeks later, I found the wedding photo again. Still in the box, still wrapped in the towel. I didn't tear it up. Didn't burn it. I opened the box, looked at the image for a long time. We looked happy in that photo. And maybe we were, for a while. But not every chapter needs to be edited. Some just need to be closed. I added something to the box that day. A slip of wood from the Mustang, sanded down and smooth. On it, I etched a small line with a woodbending tool, 11 years. Once was. That's all. No bitterness. Just truth. I sealed the box again and slid it to the very top shelf in the garage, behind the insulation boards. Out of sight. Still mine, but not in the way it used to be. It was the last time I looked at it. Fall came. The leaves outside turned sharp and red. I planted a new tree in the front yard. One of those slow growers that takes years to hit its stride. I read somewhere that planting something is an act of hope, even when you're not sure who will be around to see it bloom. I guess that's what I was doing. Emma never came back. Not really. She sent one more message months later. A vague apology. Some story about therapy helping her see herself clearly for the first time. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, just because I didn't owe her anything anymore. She was part of the blueprint. But I was building something new now. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't hurt. It doesn't press on your chest or make you feel like you're screaming in a vacuum. It's the kind that lets you breathe deeper. That's what the house feels like now. It's not a couple's home anymore. It's mine. I don't know what's coming next. I'm not chasing anything, not waiting for the next Emma, not looking to fill gaps. I've got dust on my hands and plans rolled out across the bench. Lines drawn not for skyscrapers or grand visions, but for simpler things. Stronger things. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not building for someone else. I'm building for me. And this time, it's going to last.